again, let's start off with a brief introduction with your name and the name of your company and what is the functions of Paycorp HR.
Well, I'm Ismael Gonzalez. I'm the controlling person for Paycorp HR. Obviously a professional employment organization. My duties in the department I handle, being the controlling person, would be everything really fulfillment. It would be everything from making sure the client is getting the proper payroll reports, all of the compliance issues that they may have and services that they're providing and benefits they're providing to their employees, whether that's health benefits, 401k, workers' compensation insurance obviously is in there, one of the major components, as well as all compliance at the PEO level, which PEO do have quite a bit of reporting, whether that's at the federal, state, local levels, with all of our different government municipalities and so forth.
Okay. And what led you to this path where now, you're a controller for a big PEO company like Paycorp?
Well, that was actually stumbled upon. As you know, we met through National Workmen's Comp. You were one of their top brokers at the time, I believe. And I was actually their tax and accountant. So we met through there. Obviously, the partners there decided to grow their business, and their obvious next step from being a power broker that they were was to actually go into the PEO space. And at that point, they recruited me. They felt that I was the one qualified to lead that position, and we formulated that partnership. And well, the rest is history.
Yeah, definitely a lot of history there. Becoming a sales broker, there was a lot of
yeah, for you too.
Yeah, it was a good 6-7 years we did that. So it's good to see that Paycorp has evolved to what it's been. It's a great platform for a lot of the contractors. So talk to us a little bit about the difference between a PEO and why a contractor would go to a PEO industry versus, a traditional workers' comp policy, for example.
Okay, well, there's quite a bit in them. It's not really a one size fits all. In a PEO, you would have, you're basically joining a group, for lack of a better term. So you're, in essence, almost leasing back your employees. Your employees would be reported under the PEOs. So basically all of that payroll, taxation, liabilities, all of those things come off of the worksite employer, in this case, a general contractor or contractor, whatever they may be, and moves on to the PEO. The PEO would worry about all the tax reporting, such as 940s, 941s, RT6s, and all of that compliance. The client, in essence, will receive what's called a labor distribution report, which would have all of their employees or utilized individuals that are referred to in the contract listed with all of their wages, all of their federal income tax withholdings, whether it be SUTA rates, FUTA rates, FICA, everything's on there to make sure everything's in compliance. Keeping in mind that the PEO cannot take benefit away from the worksite employer, let's say the employee retention tax credit or anything like that, any of that would still be passed on to the worksite employer, although those employees are reported under the PEO EIN. There's a carve out in the tax codes for that. Okay. As opposed to a standalone policy, which was, I believe you're referring to there, where the person would have their own policy just for their employees. Some of the main differences are, in a standalone policy, for example, you do have the audit process. Sometimes I've even seen it twice a year. They will come in, the carrier will come in and they will want to audit your books to make sure that the payroll you're reporting is accurate and that you're not hiding payroll, or that your subcontractor exposure is below the threshold that they will allow you to have, or else they'll disallow that and count that as part of your wages, and you'll have to pay workers' compensation on that. We see that quite a bit. As far as the audit process in a PEO goes, it's virtually non-existent on the workers' compensation side. But actually on that subject, for example, you may still have an audit with the general liability. Being in a PEO could help out with that, because when they ask for payroll and things of that nature, You can provide that labor distribution report to help out even with an audit on a general liability side.
Interesting.
When you're in a standalone, obviously it's just that. It is just a standalone workers' compensation policy. So if you wanted something else for your employees, let's say, again, health benefits or 401ks or anything of that nature, you would have to get all of those things on your own. So,
So there's a lot of information there to dive into. Obviously, there is a lot of difference between the two policies. So let's try to take a step back and let's talk about the audit, because that seems to be such a big issue for a lot of contractors.
Yeah,
you know,
actually.
So what is that audit process like? Obviously for us, we know that there is no audit process for the PEO as a contractor. What is the requirements that they need to be compliant in the PEO policy? What does that look like?
Well, in the PEO, to be compliant in a PEO relationship, you're basically going to run any payroll that you do have that are your employees under the PEO. What you really can't do is say, I'm only going to run 3 of my employees and the other 7 I'm going to pay myself, or I'm going to pay them as 1099 when they're really employees. That is a violation of the contract. Now, what could happen? What's the danger of that? The danger of that is that someone could get hurt at work. And if they are not being, the payroll is not being run through the PEO is going to fight that claim. And they're basically going to win, whether it's Paycorp or any PEO for that matter, because there is no employee-employer relationship established.
Yeah.
You simply didn't run payroll. So, for example, in our PEO, it's very specific. When you add an employee, that employee is not authorized to work or is covered by the workers' compensation policy until you get that confirmation email depicting that employee's name and their new employee number from that moment forward. So you can't really add somebody post them starting to work because, again, God forbid there's an accident, the PEO is going to vehemently defend against that for obvious reasons. With that said, in a standalone policy, you're going to estimate what your payroll is going to be. You're going to ballpark it, for lack of a better term. When that happens, most people tend to go a little on the low side so that the premium's low. When that audit comes around, here comes that bill. That bill needs to be paid. If you do not pay that, that standalone policy or PEO for that matter could report you to the state and literally block you from getting other workers' compensation insurance. There are laws to help us along with that because you can't basically jump from provider to provider. You must pay your workers' compensation. So if you are, and people do go that route, standalone, the best policy is honesty. Estimate the best you can, provide the true payroll, and do business correctly, and you really won't run into problems.
That's an interesting thing that you say that when it comes to the 1099s and subcontractors and stuff like that in the audit process. I think a lot of contractors, I'm not sure if it's an accounting thing or, a lot of people tell that, just pay their 1099s, pay them cash,
Right.
or a check, and they're just a 1099. From your experience, what is it really to be considered a true 1099 in the state of Florida?
And it's getting even harder at the federal level with that. And new laws are constantly coming out because, someone may say, hey, I just going to pay them 1099 and avoid the payroll taxation and avoid the workers' compensation. They're an independent contractor, obvious solution. But the Internal Revenues, and anybody could Google that. What is a 1099 according to IRS, or however you want to Google it. And there's a list. The IRS will tell you, and there are tests for it. Are you providing equipment? Are you providing a uniform? Can that person have other clients besides you? Because if I'm a 1099, an independent contractor, I can have many clients. Are you controlling my time? Are you controlling my wages? Do I set my fees? Am I fee-based? Am I hourly wage? All of these things, and you only need enough ticks there for the IRS to disallow that as a 1099. So for example, in a PEO relationship, you could come to me, Mike, and say, hey, I have 4 employees and really you're running 10 guys on 1099s. Well, they're not employees. So if they get hurt, they're not going to be covered by our comp. We're not collecting payroll. We're not doing anything with those people. And I really have no way of knowing that. There are other perils that you have with that as a contractor, whether they be with the IRS or risk analysis standpoint or the state, the Florida Department of Revenue, whatever it may be, because the Florida Department of Revenue is going to be looking for their unemployment if they are. And, a contractor could get away with that for years. But, I had one instance where one guy had, several 1099s, and one of them was unhappy with the fact that when he went to do his tax return, he had a tax bill. There is no withholding. He didn't put in, and you're subject to SE tax, self-employment tax, when you're a 1099. It's about 15%. So that person got upset and basically didn't report, gets the letter from the IRS, blah, calls and says, I don't understand why I wasn't withheld. Tells the IRS, I'm an employee. And basically that set off a chain reaction.
Wow. So that's actually very interesting and a great example of what a PEO can do, right? What is something in this situation that could have been preventative through your company, through Paycorp HR? What is something that they could have done to prevent something like that? Or obviously them becoming an employee would be number one, right?
Right. Them becoming an employee is number one. We're handling everything for you. Yes, you have your taxes, your payroll taxes that you'll be paying. Yes, you'll be paying workers' compensation. Obviously, you'll have what we call a TLB, or total labor burden, added onto that person. But you're above board, and we do advise our clients. For example, if they're honest with them and say, hey, listen, I have 10 guys, and I have, give you an example, an AC guy, and he does a lot of AC work. He has several technicians. They're all on payroll, runs everything above board. Has this one guy that does ducting work for him. But that's only when he needs it. He is an independent guy, but that ducting guy, asked him the question, that ducting guy he was like, yeah, my buddy has an AC company, does it for him too. So he's not controlling this guy. He doesn't provide the equipment for him. The guy has his own truck, doesn't have a company, but he is indeed an independent contractor. So I'm like, okay, we don't give tax advice out of the PEO level. So we said, it sounds to us like that's a independent contractor, legitimately in this case. We would recommend that you do get a independent contract. First of all, that you consult your tax professional.
Yeah. And
always have an independent contractor agreement in place with that independent contractor. Have that W-9 filled out so you can issue them and legitimately issue them a 1099 at the end of the tax year.
Yeah, and that goes along to help just protecting their business in general.
Protecting the business in general, correct.
And which policy you have, it really is just about protecting your business from that type of exposure. Like you had mentioned of the legal troubles. If that guy argued saying, well, I am an employee of the company and they are paying me. This situation is different, obviously, because he did seem like he qualified to be an independent contractor.
And the guy will have an independent contractor agreement, will have issued him a 1099, does not have him every month there or every week they're working. Once you have somebody there literally weekly working, let's face it, that's an employee.
Yeah.
You can call them a 1099 all you want, but it's an employee.
No, absolutely.
Now, PEO, can you get away with that in reality? Look, you could fly under the radar. Is it a smart thing to do? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it's in this industry, a lot of people like to cut corners. Unfortunately, cutting corners has their risk. And, obviously the best thing to do is just do things the right way. And there's certain things that you guys can do to provide that can help with that. And that kind of brings to my next topic. PEOs in general are an HR service-based industry.
Correct.
What is some of the benefits of having the PEO and the HR that Paycorp can provide to a contractor that may say, like, I don't really care about having HR services? Like, well, give me an example of how that can be helpful.
Okay, some of the things maybe, most contractors are really interested in the workers' compensation insurance. Let's be realistic. So One of the things is, if you're a small contractor, your mod score, your modification score may not be all that great. You may not have a lot of experience versus joining the PEO that has a lot more power behind it, a lot more employees behind it, maybe a very low mod score. They're able to pass those savings on to you. So where you may have a small admin fee or something like that to have the services ran for you, you're saving on the workers' compensation. You will not be able to do that alone. You're a 1 or 2 man show, let's face it. You're not going to be generating a whole lot of premium. So that alone, any standalone carrier is going to elevate that in order to make the risk worthwhile. These are the actuarial sciences, risk analysis, basically. So somebody who has 50 employees, believe it or not, is in theory less risk for the money they make in premium than the guy that's 1 employee. Because if the one guy gets hurt, that's literally 100%.
Yeah,
The premium just got hurt versus, 1 guy in 50 or 2 guys in 50 or 3 guys in 50 is still a less percentage of that premium being earned by the carrier. So, and again, those are the actuarial sciences. I don't really get into that side of it, but you can figure that out. In addition to that, there are items that you would have to pay anyway. Most contractors are not going to sit there and process their own payroll. So they're either going to pay a payroll platform or an accountant or a bookkeeper, but somebody's going to do this. So that's covered by the PEO. Other things that are offered in the PEO.
Actually, I would like to stop you right there. And it's something that I always mention to people about that cost of admin is, let's say they do their own payroll. Even if they did their own payroll and they're paying themselves, so let's say, to make $100,000 a year, you need to pay yourself minimum $50 an hour, I believe. So even if you spend an hour of doing payroll, you're still paying about $50 for that hour of time. It's either if he's doing it or if you're doing it, it's going to be outsourced. Why not let a professional?
I just don't see many people doing it themselves and still keeping in compliance with the proper report. I mean, it just, put it this way. I would never go up on a roof and try to patch anything up or change shingles or tiles for that matter. Same thing, where everybody's an expert in what they're an expert in.
Yeah. Now, what about for like startup companies that, let's say, their cash flow is not that great and they're just getting into business and they're trying to get things off the ground? What would you say to someone that is looking to get a PEO and can see, okay, the cost of this for my company, cash flow, and how can I really build my company through that?
Again, whichever PEO you're going to be honest with them. Hey, I'm going to be building up employees. I only got 2 guys right now. And at that, I may only have 1 of them for X amount of time. So if you're telling the salesperson or the broker coming in exactly what's happening, it can be designed around that. PEOs have flexibility. So they can design around it in the sense of, like, for example, if you're going to be building up, and they get, or you have a big job now where you have 5 guys. Let's go the other way, but you're going to have to trim that back to 2. Well, then we know that they price it accordingly, and they're able to taper you off those employees. And what you want to do is you always want to tell the PEO when the employee is going to stop working before they stop working, so that they can alter those fees before you get hit with them. Most PEOs do have a scaling process. The more you're running, the bigger the admin fee, because the more work. It's a time-based service.
Okay, so a good example is, like, let's say December, come holidays, and most roofers, for example, won't work for the whole month of December. What would be something you guys would do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and vacations fall into that too. Again, just letting the PEO, it's almost like a partnership. You have to communicate with your PEO. You have to tell them, hey, Mike is going to be on vacation from this day to this day before Mike goes on vacation, because if you tell the PEO after the fact, the insinuation there is that Mike was actually working and you're going to pay him on the side, and you're not going to report it to not pay the comp. So in essence, stealing the insurance. Now, I'm not saying that every single client's doing that. I do believe that most of them just forget and say, hey, this person was on vacation. But the PEO is subject to master policies, and it doesn't look good. The optics on it is not good. So if you let them know beforehand, it's like, hey, Mike's going to be on vacation next week. We have that on record. We know you're not going to report payroll for Mike. But if Mike gets in an accident the week you said he was on vacation, guess what? It's going to be fought.
So a good takeaway from that is really just communication. Communicating, really talking to your PEO, really treating them as a partnership to really handling your payroll and making sure everything is accurate, up to date, that you're paying your employees correctly. That includes overtime, health benefits, and stuff like that, vacation pay as well.
We make it easy, whether it's the platform or you want to send a simple email, you want to text back, which gets recorded into your account, because our system, we have it tagged. So if you're texting from the phone number that we have on record, it's going to go right into the CRM as a communication from you. So we have you on record. Same thing with the emails. If you're emailing from the email that we have on record, it doesn't just know, but it'll tag you. So we make it as easy as possible. We understand that our particular risk appetite that we deal in, they're on the road, they're out there quoting, they're watching their crews, they don't have time. So we always tell them that's why we're here. We're here to take that off of you. All that human resource stuff, as little as you think you have, you always have human resource issues. Proper terminations to avoid wrongful termination lawsuits.
And I think that right
where someone can report a sexual harassment incident. You report that to your PEO. Your PEO steps in, make sure that these things are being handled appropriately. Disciplinary actions are being taken. We're looking to protect the PEO and the client in that sense.
And I think that's a very important topic you're discussing, is that part, wrongful termination, and there is so many instances where, something like a claim can occur. And if a claim occurs and then they're like, okay, I'm going to fire this person because he's not working.
No, you can't do that. Absolutely not.
And talk to us of that situation. What would a contractor have to do for them to?
Would first of all, we ask that they offer light duty in some instances. Somebody may have, a common injury could be your back. You didn't use your legs. You bent over, you sprained your back. Hey, it happens. We want to make sure, first of all and foremost, that person gets proper treatment, whether it's physical therapy or what it may be, that person is not in pain. Once that person is able to move about, but they're not quite ready to get back and start lifting or getting on a roof or whatever it may be that they do, but light duty can be offered. That could be quoting, that could be sales, that could be office work. We want to offer that light duty to that person. It's the responsible thing to do as an employer. If they are not, there's still a portion of their wages that are covered by workers' compensation. I believe and don't quote me right now, but I believe the law is, about 60%. But we want them at full wages. We do want them back at full wages, and supporting their family or themselves or whatever it may be. So light duty is a very common solution for that.
Yeah, and just to give an example, light duty would be just like doing paperwork or, stuff like that they're behind a desk.
It could even be on the field, just not the actual work. It could be supervising. It could be making sure the crew's on time. It could be making sure products are getting delivered. It could be quoting clients.
Correct. Yeah, that works. Now let's I do want to move more towards risk management. I think you guys have some tools there to help contractors to minimize risk. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Our first line of defense would be the boots that are on the ground, which is the client and their supervisors. So we make sure that we have a program called the Text for Safety, and they do receive a text every Monday with a link, and that will give them the data and the material that they will do for their safety meetings. We ask them to review these things with their crews, or at the very least their supervisors, so their supervisors can bring it down to the crews. Those are technically safety meetings, and they're super helpful. I mean, it could be things anything from, again, the lifting, how to properly lift, to traveling from location to location, and just a slew of different safety tips that we do provide for them. Whether even sometimes it's just about the proper gear that you're using in a particular industry. With that said, then we do have what we call our loss mitigation or loss prevention visits, which can be requested either by us, the master carrier, or the client themselves. A lot of times, believe it or not, clients will call us and say, hey, could you visit me? A lot of our manufacturing clients will do that, say, can you visit me? And yeah, we'll send them out there. Absolutely, it's free of cost to our clients, and they'll get out there and they will indeed go through. And it's not a, it's not a big I gotcha moment and now your rates are, that's not what it's about. Yeah. It really is about avoiding injuries. And I think everybody wants that, from the employee to the client, to us, to the master carrier. Everybody really wants insurance never to be used. We want it to be a waste of money, put it that way.
Yeah, and they're very useful too. So I recall some of those reports that your normally master policy would perform, where it could be as simple as like adding a washing station or tying a ladder. And again, like you said, it's not really gotcha. It's more like they want you to reduce your claims. They want you not to have that. They don't want to pay out any of that money.
No, nobody wants to pay. It's a financial burden and it's a physical burden, and it's the client understands. So it's a financial burden to them when they have clients down, because they have work down, because they have employees down, and their rates could go up. The PEO could re-underwrite them and could increase that mod score because of claims. It's a risk analysis. We're all in business, to make sure that each company makes money, and that's just the reality of it.
Now, you had mentioned mod score before. Obviously, we know what those mod scores, what it means, but for the audience that doesn't, they hear mod score, what the hell's a mod score? What exactly is a mod score?
1.0 would mean you're at par with the state rate. In other words, whatever that state mandated rate is from the code, your risk code, that would be what you pay. If you're at 1.2, that means you're going to pay 20% more than the rate. If you're at 0.8, you're going to pay 20% below that rate. So that gives you an idea of the way it works. I've seen mod scores as low as 0.6. I mean, you're basically paying half. Those are very responsible clients. Drug-free work environment. We ask all of our clients to sign that, and all employees must sign that. So, that's, not being high or drunk on the job is kind of a requirement.
That would help.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of a situation where I guess this is important details. If they ever go to the hospital, don't ever deny a drug test, because denying a drug test will automatically decline coverage. Is that true, or is that the case?
It could be. We had a recent case, client to remain unnamed, where something like that occurred. The person had, and they will do a toxicology report there.
Yeah.
However, we will only have access to it for a certain period of time. I guess that falls on, and don't quote me on this, but HIPAA laws and whatnot, and then it goes away. We can no longer see it. So this person was involved in a vehicular accident, a motorcycle of all things. So it was already out of the scope of what he should be driving.
Yeah.
And they waited to report that accident past the period where we could see that. So that immediately starts to raise eyebrows. I mean, what were you doing? Were you under the influence? These are things that are legitimate questions. So I won't give the result of that claim, but it does come up, and those are looked at. You got to understand, those rates come out, and they're based on accidents and incidents that have happened throughout the year. So we all affect each other, basically. Those rates, just like any other insurance. Hurricane insurance goes up in Florida because there's a lot of hurricanes and a lot of claims. Same idea. Again, we go right back to it. It's the actuarial sciences. People way above my pay rate there that are figuring out those numbers.
Yeah, those numbers are pretty complicated to figure out.
So the drug thing is another step for that safety.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to be,
No,
smoking weed or having a beer and
no,
work, and then
not common anyway.
not recommended. Okay, so in terms of compliance and law, I guess we touched a lot on that part. We covered the 1099 and subcontract. That's really good stuff. There has been a new law that came out, and you don't have to go into full detail. If you know a lot about it, that'd be great. But the e-verification that came out last year of businesses above 25 plus employees, does that affect a PEO that has hundreds of employees versus somebody that just has 25 and they need a
actually the PEO is unless the PEO itself has more than 25 employees to run the PEO, they would not fall subject to it either. Again, the PEO, it's understood, and there is a carve out in that law for it. And I know I read it correctly, but no, the PEO would still be okay in that sense, because they're not the worksite employer. They're only the employer for purposes of, again, human resource things, reporting payroll, taxation, and things of that nature. And I'm pretty sure that I had that somewhere. I'm looking at my other screen here, and it would take me a minute to find that. But yeah, here it is. I believe it's Law Bill 1718 at the time. Here you go. The law provides an employee leasing company which enters into a written agreement or understanding with a client company which places the primary obligation of compliance with this section upon the client company is not required to verify employment eligibility of any new employees of the client company. In the absence of a written agreement or understanding, the employee leasing company is responsible for compliance with this section. Such employee leasing companies shall at all times remain an employer as otherwise defined by federal laws and regulation. So, for example, in ours, we do put the I-9, the onus of the I-9 on the client. We have to. We're not there seeing that person. We're not seeing that license or that passport or that resident card or the stamp on the passport, the I whatever, 5 whatever stamp on the passport. We're not physically seeing this and the person there. We service clients all over the state. It would be prohibitive cost-wise for a PEO to have to drive and check every single employee. So that onus by contract is on the client company and that owner or that manager. We do receive a copy of the I-9 and we take it at face value just to make sure that you did it as a client company.
So just to reiterate what an I-9 is for those that don't understand.
The form I-9 is basically the form that basically says you're legal to work in the country. It has 3 columns when you get there, and you either have to have a document from column A or a document from column B and C. So it's either 2 of these, and there's a whole list of them, or just 1 of these. So it's either A or B and C. Okay. And they have a chart that lets you know which documents they are.
Perfect. So understanding correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, based on what you're saying, the responsibility still falls back as the owner of the company to verify the I-9 to make sure their legal status.
Our PEO, and I don't know of any PEO that does it different.
Okay. All right. Good. So that's great subject to touch on, especially with that change last year. It rattled the industry pretty tremendously.
And there is actually, I think there's another section or a different law in the state of Florida that now criminalizes hiring folks that are not eligible to work in the country. Where I think, and again, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not posing myself as such, and this is most certainly not legal advice, but I believe it criminalizes it, takes it from that civil level to criminal level. And I believe, I want to say it's in July that the teeth come to the law.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I remember last year when that occurred, like everybody was on halt. Like nobody knew what to do. Everybody was scared. Yeah, obviously we all know like the construction industry, it's filled with undocumented people. So this is something that I think is very important for all contractors to understand.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, we've all gone to the Home Depot and seen the day laborers and all of that. And it's in many instances very sad. Those people sometimes are abused. They're paid subpar wages, most certainly subpar benefits, and I can't see a contractor doing anything but popping him in the back of a pickup truck and leaving him at urgent care if they got hurt, and that's about it.
Yeah, and it's not all just the Home Depot. I mean, like full staff companies have a bunch of people on staff that doesn't qualify to work in the country, and it's funny, today I already had 2 complaints of them saying it's just hard to find U.S. citizens that actually want to get their hands dirty and do all the grunt work. So it's unfortunate. It's a
whole other subject, unfortunately. So.
Exactly. It's a very it's a touchy subject, I guess you could say.
I can't comment on other people's work values. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So there are some types of policies that are very interesting that could be unique. I've seen some MPP endorsed policies. Can you elaborate a little bit on what those MPP policies does and how they can benefit contractors?
Sure. Well, okay. So an MPP policy, a minimum premium policy, is basically really, to cut through the chase, where the client is going to see the benefit is a certificate of insurance looks a little bit different than a PEO. So it's going to look as if you have a standalone policy because it's an endorsement is what it is. So the master carrier through the PEO is giving this endorsement for that one client versus the PEO's clients at large. Normally a certificate shows the insured as the PEO, and then down at the bottom, the operations shows the client list. It'll say all employees of Mike Ortiz Contractors, but not subcontractors of, and it'll have the effective date when you got on a PO and a couple of other data. If you have a contractor, GC number, so on and so forth.
And obviously for benefits of that is contracts, right? Like they can bid for contracts because it shows their company is insured.
Correct.
A lot of vendors these days will, want their name as the insured versus the PEO.
A lot of times they may want to see that for whatever reason, because PEO certificates of insurance are just the same. They operate the same. They're still, legitimate 100%, but some people may be caught in a particular frame of mind.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I think we covered a lot today, and there's a lot of things. I do have one more question regarding some of the tools that you guys offer, which is time clock management. Is there any benefits of time clock management? Great tool.
A lot of our clients use it. Basically what it does, it allows either the owner of that firm or their appointee, whether it's a manager or supervisor or whatnot, to go ahead and key in all of their employees' time, whether it be straight time, overtime, vacation time. So they're literally seeing it, they're keying it all in, they're watching it literally add up right before their eyes, and then when they hit send, it'll ask them for an approval. They'll be able to approve that, and then our payroll team will get that as an approved payroll, and it'll be uploaded right into our payroll platform, which in turn will produce either the direct deposits or the physical checks, whatever that client has opted to receive. There are benefits, and then some people are just not that organized and they prefer to just respond to an email. They get automatic reminders, and some people just, they'd rather just, they're out there doing what they do best and doing good work. We try to make it easy. So it's about 4 or 5 different ways that a contractor can report their payroll on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, whatever it is, cycle it is that they're on.
All right, so that's some good stuff. All right, so I mean, I guess we were pretty much good with everything. We discussed a lot of topics on the PEO side. For the listeners who are interested in Paycorp services, where can they find more information about Paycorp?
Well, they could go obviously to our website, paycorphr.com, or they could simply call our office at 904-206-7105. I have to actually look at my card there to remember that. Or they could even email us at admin@paycorphr.com, and one of our sales reps will get out to you. They're going to ask some basic questions and basically run through you, and we cater it to that client. That's the main takeaway for most PEOs, quite honestly. Different PEOs have different risk appetites. They want to work in the different realms of whether it be construction or more gray collar or even white collar stuff. In our case, we like the blue collar. We like growing with the smaller contractors. You know, our sweet spot is that 1 to 20 man show that's looking to grow, and we like to enjoy growing them. And well, we're the best home for them. We look forward to servicing them.
There you go. Thank you so much, Ismael. It was a pleasure. And
good seeing you as always.
Always, man. Have a great day, man. Take care.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye.